The ideologically conservative Supreme Court has struck down President Joe Biden's student debt forgiveness plan in a not so surprising 6-3 decision. Boy, we've been seeing a lot of them. The court ruled that Biden lacked the authority to cancel debt under the 2003 HEROES Act. Now, that act, which was passed by Congress, states that the president can give the Secretary of Education broad powers to change rules of federal student loans during a national emergency, which again, we had a national emergency. It was called COVID. Whether or not people actually believed that it was an emergency or not, the government declared it an emergency, which would make, put that act into effect. And so now, again, the law says that the Secretary of Education may waive or modify any statutory or regulatory provision related to federal student loans as may be necessary to ensure that borrowers are not placed in a worse position financially because of a national emergency. So now, of course, waive, modify, well, they waived some of the loans, or at least attempted to, and modified the loans by modifying up to $20,000 of those loans out of existence. But apparently the conservatives were not buying that argument. So now, that said, let's get into more of the argument the administration was making. Basically, hey, they said, look, we can forgive a portion of these student loans, these federal student loans, okay, up to $20,000, $10,000 for most, but again, all based on federal Pell Grants, which are given to low-income students. And we have that authority because we're, one, in a pandemic, which is a national emergency, but also that if you have them pay back the full portion after this emergency, then that will harm borrowers. So, okay, now, look, that makes sense to me. Now, the thing is, the administration, I believe, was correct, and I'm going to give you some economic numbers to show that, yes, having to pay back these loans will harm borrowers and even the economy at large. So, according to experts like Mark Zandi, chief economist at Moody's Analytics, borrowers for federal student loans faced an average $250 a month in extra payments when the pandemic relief pause on interest and required payments comes to an end after more than 3 years. And that's without any sort of forgiveness. The reduction of spending money in the pockets of borrowers will likely drag down consumer spending, reducing economic growth as measured by the GDP by a couple of tenths of 1%. Now you might think, well, a couple of tenths of 1%, how much damage that could do? Actually quite a bit. Because again, raising interest rates, what, Jerome Powell had been doing at the Federal Reserve, that had a noticeable effect on jobs. Okay, a noticeable effect on prices. And so, yes, it has had quite an effect, even these small changes. Okay, so now, in a more typical time, as Andy noted, that's not really a big deal. The economy can digest that gracefully. But in the current environment, where the economy is weak as it is, recession risks as high as they are, a couple of tenths of 1% can matter. And that was, again, just a couple of months ago. Okay. Marcia Steinbaum, an economist and economics professor at the University of Utah, predicted the U.S. could be looking at a, quote, pretty severe fiscal contraction, which the borrowers begin making loan payments again. Quote, I think it's clear that the fact that people have more spending power means that they can spend more, and that's good for aggregate demand. It's just a more onerous way of operating a lending portfolio, of trying to collect debt that fundamentally cannot be collected, and trying to squeeze the borrowers as much as possible in order to make that debt collectible. And that's very bad for the macro economy. Now, in previous interviews, also, they noted that the repayment pause had not had any sort of negative impact on the economy. So not paying loans at all, by the way, had no negative effect on the economy. And then, in fact, has roughly put $500 billion back into the pockets of borrowers, according to the Department of Education. So people not paying the loans has actually been good for the economy. So what do you think is going to happen when, again, we're going to have to start repaying the loans, okay, in October, um, and, not having any of the, just having the complete full balance that was due, which again, higher payments, that means higher payments when you have a bigger balance. That's going to be pretty disastrous for the overall economy. In fact, Thomas Simons, U.S. economist with the investment bank Jefferies, no relation, said, I've been anticipating a pretty significant impact on consumer spending as soon as the payments start again. My suspicion is that most of the folks who are going to have to start paying again have limited capacity to handle the increased expense while navigating other financial challenges. I expect that this is going to be the tipping point that puts the economy into a recession. It sounds great. Oh, wonderful, wonderful. All the people that are screaming, yeah, you should pay it back. You shouldn't have any sort of payment pause. You should pay the whole thing back plus interest. You took out the loan, you pay it. Well, you're going to be really, really upset a few months from now, when the economy takes a crap off a cliff. Congratulations. Well done. I mean, again, right now, you have so many people a huge chunk of the 40 million Americans that, would have, that are impacted by this. Okay. A lot of them are saying, we're not ready to restart payments. We still have inflation that's fairly high. We still have, issues with not being paid enough, jobs are not paying as much as they should. We're having a lot of different issues here financially. We are not ready to repay these loans. We can't do it. Now, that said, Simmons mentioned that, quote, despite the student loan moratorium, Americans mostly didn't bank their savings, so they'll likely have to cut back on other things. Travel, restaurants. To fit resumed loan payments into their budgets, belt tightening could hurt an economy that relies heavily on consumer spending. So this is how it affects you guys. Okay, those of you who are not people who owe student loans who would be helped by this, you're going to be harmed when the economy contracts. Simple as that. You're going to be harmed when people have to now devote more of their resources to servicing loans that are predatory in nature and will not be spending it on your business. Congratulations. And that's also going to have a snowball effect on jobs, pay, etc., etc. So if you're happy about this, well, you might want to, be prepared for the economic consequences of these 40 million Americans no longer spending money on things like restaurants, homes, cars, consumer goods, etc., etc. Participating in the economy, which again is primarily consumer spending driven. People have already tightened their belts as a result of inflation. So it's only going to get worse now. And that is going to have an impact on you. So if your business suffers, if your business falters, because you're not able to have as much business because people can't afford to frequent your business, well, don't complain. Don't complain. And certainly, whatever you do, don't turn to the government for help. But of course, they're going to both do that. And here come more articles. Why isn't Gen Z buying diamonds?